when we're out there, the best moments when we're out there performing are the ones that you don't remember after. To let yourself go and become the instrument. I mean, she's talking about music here, but dance is the same. Your body is your instrument. As a choreographer, your dancers are your instrument. Like, to be able to let that go and just be so in the moment, and to not be afraid of anything you came from, anything that happens out on stage. I mean, I struggle with that. I think everyone does. I have a bad show, it's really hard for me to sometimes come back from that. But the best shows are, you could maybe mess up, and then afterwards, you don't remember that you messed up. I think in general, that's the story of a dancer's life, because you're just exhausted all the time, and so it's like you have to love it in order to stay in it. But certainly this last few years, where I was working as rehearsal director, as a teacher, as a dancer, principal dancer, and as a choreographer, it was too much, and there were a lot of tears at home, I'm not gonna lie. Like, at midnight, I still don't know the ballet that I have to teach the next day. I'm like writing everything down, and I've been dancing since 9:30 in the morning, and there's a deadline, like the piece has to go up, and it's not anywhere near ready to go up. And for sure, it's like, okay, you have the experience, you can do this, you have done the work yourself in those roles, and you just have to give the information to the other people. And also, just being a dancer on stage is also the same. Like, the moment something bad happens on stage, you have to, like, something in your mind, you have to tell yourself, it didn't happen, I have to push forward, I have to keep going, put it behind you, forget about it, because that's not the end all. One misstep is not the end all. 5 missteps is not the end all.
Yeah.
How you finish, and finishing strong, is the important part.
Amanda, how you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm doing good. Welcome to the Storycast.
Thank you, I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. It's really cool to meet people that have just different abilities and passions, and are just at the top of their field in different ways. And so you're here for NOCO Dance Intensive this week. How's that been?
It's been fantastic.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. So you travel a lot.
Yeah, a good bit, yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
Oh, that's amazing. So, like, just an initial softball question, like what's been your favorite place to travel?
Oh, let's see. Well, for work, I think the most interesting place we've been is Nicaragua.
Awesome.
For sure.
That's amazing.
We got to travel the country a little. We performed in 3 different cities. The embassy was with us. Oddly enough, I got sick from visiting the embassy and having lunch at the embassy.
Oh no.
But not in any of the towns, just at the embassy.
That's funny.
But it was really great.
They're serving some bad chicken there at that embassy.
Something.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, just a little bit about the Storycast. So the reason why I started this is because I'm fascinated by dreams. I'm fascinated by the fact that we lay our heads down at night after a hard day's work, and our brains, instead of powering down, they power up, and they start creating these fictitious and wild environments where we're superheroes and we're doing things we can't do in real life, and just these crazy, zany situations unfold, sometimes horrific things unfold in our dreams, and our brain is just doing that while we're sleeping. It's like rhythmic. But what's more fascinating to me is when we wake up. Because when we wake up, the dreams continue. And we actually dream more when we wake up than when we're asleep. We dream about who we could be, where we could go, what we could achieve, and what we could see. And I'm fascinated by the people who say, what if I make that dream a reality? And I take it out of here and I put it out here. And I think you're one of those people. And so just tell us a little bit about your journey as a professional dancer, as a choreographer, as just a dance pro in general. Tell us about your journey from start to where you're currently at.
Okay, so my parents put me in dance when I was little, like 5 years old. I was very wiggly, and they needed to get that energy out. So I started dance at 5. I had some friends that had a studio, so I started at a competition school where we were really focused on tap dance. And the ballet teacher at the time thought, okay, she needs to study some ballet a little more seriously. This was around 8 or 9. So I went to a ballet conservatory, but I was going to both studios at the same time. So I was still doing the competition, and I was doing the ballet conservatory. I got my first pair of pointe shoes at 9, which is young. That's too,
Really?
Honestly, it's way too young.
What's like the common age?
Like 12, 13.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
And I was in class with older students, just always looking up to them. I went to a school for the arts in Jacksonville, Florida for high school, which is really cool because you get to study your academics in the morning, and then the afternoon you're in your art form. And there's lots of people around you who are interested in lots of different things, and everyone's an artist. So it's kind of like Fame,
cool.
a little bit,
Yeah.
like the movie Fame.
Okay.
And I was able to be part of the performance group there. So I was having choreographers come from New York City, from San Francisco, from Philadelphia. They were coming even when I was in high school to set works on us, which is something that was incredibly valuable at the time. And then when that moment comes for every dancer, like, am I going to go to college or am I going to become a professional? So I did the audition circuit. I got a couple of contracts, like apprentice contracts.
Wow.
At the time, apprentices didn't get paid much. And my parents were they wanted me to go to school. So it was like a reality check, like, can I actually move to, say, Nashville and from Florida and become a professional and not really have any resources? No. The reality was no. So I went to Florida State University where I studied dance. I have a BFA in dance, and I was also pre-med. I was exercise science, hoping to maybe become a physical therapist. I did 5 years at Florida State University, so I could have graduated with the dance degree, but I kept going with the dance classes. So I didn't graduate right away with the dance degree, so that while I was there for exercise science, I was still taking class. And at Florida State, I was really lucky that the faculty there, they don't come from an academic background. So I was taking class with people from the Royal Ballet, from the Merce Cunningham Company, Martha Graham Company, all these people who had professional careers.
Wow.
And I met some people there that had danced at New York Theater Ballet. They were there for their master's degree. And they said, you would be a great fit for this company in New York. It's a small company, but when you're ready, let us know. We'll give it a try. You can come audition. So I think it was February of 2008, I got a phone call saying, okay, they're looking for a dancer at New York Theater Ballet, you should go audition. So I went on my spring break in February to New York for the first time. I'd never been to New York. February is not a great time to see New York for the first time.
That's what I'm hearing, yeah.
It's cold, it's, I don't know, there's snow, it's, just not the best time. And I wasn't like a big company audition, so there wasn't like a company audition call per se. So I was going to see the company perform. They had several shows that weekend, and I got invited to take class with them on stage. So their warm-up class was my audition.
Oh, wow.
And that weekend, I got offered an apprenticeship contract.
It's amazing.
Yeah, but at the time, silly me, I'm like, you know what, can I get back to you in a couple weeks and let you know if I want to take the contract? I have a couple other auditions I want to do.
Uh-huh.
No one does that. That's
Okay.
that's silly.
Sure.
A week later, I'm thinking about it like, this is New York City you're talking about. Like,
yeah.
you got it, just go. So I joined the company in August of 2008. I was an apprentice. My first year was hard. Transitioning from a college, university, where it's a very safe, encouraging place, to becoming a professional in New York City is such a big change. And I really struggled, and I tried to learn from the people around me. I didn't think I would get a job the next year. I thought for sure, like, they're never gonna invite me back, but they did. And by my 4th year, I was promoted to principal in the company. Wow. It's a small company. There's only like 14 dancers and 3 principals, so 2 women, one man.
Okay, yeah.
They don't have like soloists or anything like that. It's just like the company and then 3 principals, basically. So this was kind of a big deal for me, like to become a principal in this company.
Yeah.
And while I was there for 15 years. And the company is really, really kind of cool because it does this work that is like it revivals. It brings back ballets that were long lost. Ballets from Anthony Tudor. I danced Agnes de Mille work, which would be, musical theater, Oklahoma, things like that. Jose Limon, Merce Cunningham. So just amazing revivals. And coaches, people who were really like stars from those works, or people who had worked with those choreographers were coming in and coaching us or staging the work on us. So I felt like I was getting information that, from firsthand almost, information that I hadn't really received in college. Even though I had taken all the dance history and I was really into the dance history, this was like adding another layer. So then on top of that, the company also does new choreography. And the director at the time had a really great eye for emerging work, like emerging choreographers. So I had work created for me by Pam Tanowitz, who is now, this was like before she was a big deal. We were probably one of the first ballet companies she ever worked with.
Wow.
And now she's been with Royal Ballet, City Ballet, ABT. She's like making all this work.
Yeah.
And she created 3 ballets on me. And Gemma Bond, who is now a big name, she's actually currently working on a piece for American Ballet Theater. New York Theater Ballet was her first commission.
Wow.
And I was the dancer she wanted to work with. This was before I got promoted to principal.
Okay.
And I remember the director being like, I don't know why, but she wants to work with you, so don't mess this up.
Yeah.
And then I formed a really nice connection with Gemma, and I've worked with her 6 or 7 times, many at New York Theater Ballet, and then also she's hired me to help collaborate on other projects that she's doing.
Wow.
So, and I also got introduced to David Gordon, who is the father of postmodern dance, basically. One of the founding members of the Judson Church Group. And postmodern dance being like, you strip everything down and it's just regular people on stage. And I was fortunate to be hired with a couple of my colleagues to do a show with him and his company at the Kitchen, which is really cool downtown New York dance space with a lot of history. And then that went really well. And so the next project he had, which was to make work at MoMA, we performed for a week at MoMA. I was hired as one of his assistants. So I got really close with him.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So I had all these ideas of classical ballet, classical modern, new works, postmodernism. All of this was just keeping me going as a dancer for a long time. And now I think that it's starting to show in my choreographic work. This is kind of a unique experience in New York City to come from this place of all these different types of dance. And so I think my work, it has its own voice, maybe one that's not super trendy, because I think it's something new, it's something different. But I think it's exciting to make something and then be like, oh, that reminds me of that thing I did with David, or that reminds me of that thing I did with Sarah Stackhouse, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow. It's always cool to watch people on different paths and journeys through life, because, we all have a journey. Life just has a way of like navigating us through it. And I love how you said that there was this moment where here you are being invited to be a part of this company, and you're like, let me think about it. And you're like, and I think there's so many times where we can look back on those moments and be like, holy cow, what if I said no?
Yeah.
What if I went another direction? What would happen? Like the butterfly effect. And it's so cool to see where you've come out of that yes decision and all the incredible experiences. One of the things that we ask when we invite people on the show is, what's your drink of choice? And so you chose white wine.
I did.
So I brought a Sauvignon Blanc. And so cheers to that. Tell us why white wine? I think people associate their favorite things with like maybe a memory or an experience. So why white wine?
Actually, this is new for me, white wine.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So I used to be a really big red wine person. And then I went through a real big whiskey phase. And then recently, just for the past few years, like getting into the white wine. And I think it just is like, instead of feeling like I need to be amped up, it kind of is like relaxing me.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Maybe it's a maturity thing, I don't know. The white wine.
With wisdom comes wine.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that actually raises a good question. Like, I'm sure in your realm, in your industry, it's probably high pace, high energy, probably a lot of like go, 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 go. I mean, New York in itself is known as, I think it's known as the city that never sleeps.
Right.
And I'm sure you probably never sleep at times. And so like, I'm sure this probably represents maybe something in your heart that's like, okay, I've gone for so long and I've just been grinding it out for so long that maybe I can just slow down for a second. Like, I know that you're kind of in a transition season as well, where you're moving into more choreographic work. Like, what does that transition look like? Is it kind of that slowing down, or is it still just up and?
No, it's definitely slowing down, and I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that.
Yeah.
You know, to go from dancing, I don't know, we would probably dance like easily 7 hours a day, and then I was also on the faculty at the school, so New York Theater Ballet School. So then I would teach in the evenings. And my last couple of years, I was also the rehearsal director there. So during the day I was not just focused on my own dancing, but I was also focused on the company, teaching them their repertory and coaching the younger dancers as they come up. And then I would have to go home at the end of the day and learn the rep for the next day. Everyone's rep, not just my own.
Yeah.
So there was the past couple of years, it was like easily 12, 13-hour days.
Wow.
And that was a lot.
Yeah.
And I needed to slow down for my own like mental health. I needed to tap the brakes a little.
Right.
But at the same time, there are days that I get really anxious. I have to say, like, oh, I don't have anything today. I can go take class. That's an hour and a half, 2 hours if I'm lucky. And then, then as a choreographer, then I'm doing like, I keep it busy. Like, I'm searching for grants. I'm searching for opportunities to choreograph somewhere. I'm listening to music. I'm reading books. Like, trying to find things that keep my mind busy.
Yeah.
But it's definitely like this.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's the old adage: you can take the cat out of the jungle, but you can't take the jungle out of the cat. It's like when you get used to a certain rhythm, it's like it's really hard to like peel back the layers and be like, oh wait, maybe I should slow down.
Yeah.
I feel that. You said books. You said that you're into some books, and you said that you in your intake form you recommended a book, Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika. Okay, Rika Aoki. And I was reading through this book, and I got about halfway through, and there was a quote that just jumped out at me, because I felt like, obviously I don't know you super well, but I was like, I feel like this is something that maybe is like Amanda's heartbeat.
What's the quote?
So it's when one of the characters, Katrina, is asking her violin instructor, Shizuka, she's asking her, like, do the strings make the violin have its sound? So I'll just read this response by her instructor. I thought it was so profound. It says, "The question did not make sense. After all, the strings are what the bow plays upon and what the audience sees. It seems absurdly obvious, doesn't it?" Miss Satomi conceded. "But think about it. Why are there Stradivarius violins but no Stradivarius strings? Of course, string qualities matter, but no one pays millions or even thousands of dollars for a set of strings. Trust me, if it were necessary, we would. But strings are only the source of the vibrations. These vibrations are taken via the bridge, through the sound post, into the body of the instrument itself. And there, in the dark, the sound develops. There, in the empty spaces, a violin's voice matures, gains complexity, power, depth." Shizuka pointed at Katrina's heart. "Everything the audience hears, what we strive to create, what we live to convey, comes from there, in your hollows, in your nothingness. There is where music gains its life."
You picked the exact thing why I love this book so much. Or you're hitting on it, right? Like, this writer is really good about finding a way to put into words what it feels like to be a creator, to be an artist.
Yeah.
Like, I've never read another author that has been able to describe it in such good terms. And I think a non-artist can also maybe have that sense of what that maybe feels like.
Yeah.
That we are, when we're out there, the best moments when we're out there performing are the ones that you don't remember after. You know, that you let yourself go and become the instrument. I mean, she's talking about music here, but dance is the same. Your body is your instrument. As a choreographer, your dancers are your instrument. Like, to be able to let that go and just be so in the moment.
Yeah.
And to not be afraid of anything you came from, anything that happens out on stage. I mean, I struggle with that. I think everyone does. Like,
sure, yeah.
I have a bad show, it's really hard for me to sometimes come back from that. But the best shows are, you could maybe mess up, and then afterwards, you don't remember that you messed up.
Yeah.
You know?
It's kind of like when you're in the flow of something that you're just designed to do. You're just like, you almost like check out of your mind a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like when I sit down in these chairs and I'm sitting across from somebody that I get to hear their story and I get to hear about how they got to where they're at and where they want to go from there. It's just like my brain just kind of like, all right, I'm going to take it on autopilot and go with it because it's like, this is what I was designed to do. And it's always, I loved watching you at the ballet that you did here, the Nutcracker Ballet in last December, because here's the thing, you watch people that have skill and then you watch people that have skill and passion. But then you watch people that have skill and passion and that flow, and it's just different. And I don't know how to explain it, but it's just different. And I literally would notice, like when you and Jonathan would come out on stage, and when you would dance together, when you would dance separately or individually, you noticed those three things in tandem. It was like it was all clicking. And I was like, I was marveling at it.
Well, that's incredible because it didn't necessarily feel like that the whole time.
And that's the thing. I don't think like you sometimes get out of those flow states and you question like, oh, was I good? Was I saw this this picture of like the creative cycle, and it's so tragic and so funny at the same time. We start by creating, we love what we create, and we slowly start to hate it, and eventually we're like, I hate it so much, I'm never going to create ever again. And then we just go right back to getting right back into the cycle, and it's the creative process. But I think there's also something profound about that, because like that endless cycle of like enjoying the creation and then hating it, inspiring us to therefore create again, is what keeps us progressing and moving forward. So I want to ask you, because I'm sure along the journey of your success and your advancement in your career, I'm sure there were setbacks along the way and hard things that you had to deal with and ways that you had to train your mind. And one of the things that I've noticed in all the dreamers that I've interviewed, they all have a mindset about life. They all have a philosophy. They all have a way of like almost tricking themselves in hard situations to be like, I'm going to power through this. What can you tell us a story of maybe a time where you had to do that and how you trained your mind to propel you through that hard situation?
Trying to think of a specific story. I think in general, though, that's the story of a dancer's life, because you're just exhausted all the time, and so it's like you have to love it in order to stay in it. But certainly this last few years, where I was working as rehearsal director, as a teacher, as a dancer, principal dancer, and as a choreographer, it was too much, and there were a lot of tears at home, I'm not gonna lie. Like, at midnight, I still don't know the ballet that I have to teach the next day. I'm writing everything down, and I've been dancing since 9:30 in the morning, and there's a deadline, like the piece has to go up, and it's not anywhere near ready to go up. And for sure, it's like, okay, you can do it. You have the experience. You can do this. You have done the work yourself in those roles, and you just have to give the information to the other people. And also, just being a dancer on stage is also the same. Like the moment something bad happens on stage, you have to something in your mind. You have to tell yourself, it didn't happen. I have to push forward. I have to keep going. Put it behind you. Forget about it. Because that's not the end all. One misstep is not the end all. 5 missteps is not the end all.
Yeah.
How you finish and finishing strong is the important part, right?
Yeah.
And if you have the passion for it. So I think there's a lot of tricking yourself in your mind to just keep going.
Yeah.
Or an injury. I was pretty fortunate. I didn't have any major injuries.
Oh, good. Yeah.
A couple, the last year, I got a little tear on my calf, so that was okay, I couldn't finish Nutcracker season.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was back in time for the spring season, you know. But then there were other injuries where there wasn't anyone who could step in for me. So you roll your ankle's black and blue, huge. You still have 6 more shows that weekend.
Yeah.
You have to just do it, you know. You just convince yourself, like, it doesn't hurt. It's fine. Keep going. It's not hard. It's easy. That's what I tell the students in the class too.
Yeah.
We do a really hard adagio, like slow, sustained exercise, and I can see them on their face. Like, I can already tell the ones that aren't going to be successful because they're like, this is too hard. I can't do this.
Yep.
And they're like, no, this isn't hard. Tell yourself it's not hard.
Yeah.
It's easy. I mean, we know it's not, but it's easy.
It's fascinating when people convince themselves that the hard thing is easy, and then it brings the bar down to here, and then all of a sudden there's a new hard thing, and they're like, well, if that's easy too, then it brings and it's sequential.
Yeah.
And so some people see these mountaintops that they're like, I'll never climb to that. I'll never get there. And it's like, well, you don't jump out of an airplane onto the mountaintop unless you're a crazy, snowboarder. Like, you start at the base and you climb your way up. And you have those moments where you have a tear in your calf and you're like, all right, I'm going to power through this. This is easy. I'm going to get over this. I'm going to keep moving. You're up at midnight trying to frantically ride out a ballet.
Yeah.
I got this. I've done this before. I can do this. And I'm realizing, like, we forget about the universal kind of law. Like, this is a scientific law in the universe that every action has an equal or opposite reaction. And how that law gives us so much power, like, over ourselves. Like, how many people, something negative happens to them and they choose to respond with an equal reaction of negativity. Or, something positive happens to them and then they choose to respond with a negative reaction and response. It's like we all have control over that, but instead it's like, if we have control, how can we endlessly exude that positive reaction, no matter if negative comes our way or positive? And I'm sure that's helped carry you to the heights that you're at in your career. Can you think of a moment where maybe you were given a choice? Like, I call it like the moment of quitters versus winners, where it's like rubber meets the road. There's a clear fork in the road. You can either go home, quit, find a new career, or you got to power through. Was there ever a moment like that for you?
Let's see. Well, okay, we can go into something a little bit deeper here.
Sure.
So when I first moved to New York, I was actually married to my ex-husband. And 2 years into my career, he's ready to move. The idea was that we were only going to go to New York for 2 years, 3 years. I thought, yeah, sure, I can be a professional just for 3 years, no problem. No, you can't be a professional dancer for 3 years. At 3 years, you're just getting started.
Wow.
Like, you haven't done anything yet,
that makes sense.
So, yeah, he was ready to move back to Florida, back to where our families are, ready to start a family, and I wasn't. So it was like, either I stay here by myself, or I go home with my husband and I change my life. And so I chose to stay. And that was really hard.
Yeah, I bet.
Really, really difficult to make that decision. But it was like definitely the right decision. This is not, I have become an artist. Like, I can't, at the time you couldn't go back to where I'm from and be the artist I am now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that you could do that even now.
Yeah.
I needed to stay in New York. I need to be in New York. And then I met my now husband, and who is a pianist at the company that I worked for many years. And I would never have become a choreographer, the teacher that I am now, if I had gone back to Florida.
Yeah. And again, it's like life has a way of just like navigating you through it. And I think like no one gets to their deathbed and thinks to themselves, I should have made more money, or should have, written more books or worked harder at this. But they do think about the what ifs of like, what if I had done that? Where would my life have gone? What if I'd done this? And so like I tell myself and the mirror and everybody else, I'm like, just live so that that moment comes one day and you're not asking yourself, what if? You're totally confident in like, nope, I chose. And again, every action, equal opposite reaction. I chose, and there were good and bad consequences to that decision, but I chose, and I had power over me. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that was really hard, but I think like some people maybe watching this may be in a season or a moment of choice for themselves, and I think it's always cool to lean into other people who have done that. You know, it's like, I remember those moments very clearly, you know, even with Story Path, where it's like, gosh, this is a hard moment. Do I keep moving forward with this? Do I shut it down? And people in my corner saying, why would you shut something down that's like clearly meant to be? You know, it's like, so that power of community and connection, like, did you have like a really strong like friend group that was like pouring into you and like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, that's awesome.
I mean, in the when you're in a ballet company, especially a small one, it's a family.
That's cool.
You know, everybody's really close and everyone's really supportive. Although I don't think I told anyone I mean, my family who lived in Florida, they knew right away. I think I maybe only told one person in New York that this had happened.
Okay, yeah.
And it was like maybe a month before I finally like told everyone like, okay, so this happened.
Yeah.
And then everybody was really supportive and great.
That's awesome.
There was also one other moment that it's not end all or everything. You know, it's not one of these. It was the moment I was asked for the first time if I wanted to choreograph. And it was during the pandemic. It was 2021.
Okay.
And we were doing small shows in the studio. Like only 10 people could come to the audience. We had those plastic clear things between each person.
Yeah.
And they being the director and the executive director, they were interested in maybe, do we have any voices within the company that would be interested in getting going? Like, so she asked me, and this had never occurred to me to be a choreographer. And I said, I don't think so, but let me sleep on it. 3 days later, I said, okay, now's the time. If you're gonna try something new that you might fail at, why not do it now where like the world is just stuck at home and no one's gonna see your mistakes anyways.
Right.
And that was like, it was such a big turning point for me because it was such an exciting experience. It's like solving a puzzle. It just opened so many new doors for me.
Yeah.
And I knew like as soon as that first night that my piece was up there and I'm like handing it over to the artist now I can't do anything now, like, right? It's not I'm done.
Yeah.
Like they have to take it and go. It's so nerve wracking. Like I'm more nervous about my choreography than I ever was about my own dancing.
Wow.
But I knew in that moment I was like, I think I want to do this, even if I'm not good at it. Like it's just like I like it.
That's
just
awesome.
like doing it. Yeah.
It's kind of like a baby that you're handing to somebody.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like, please take care of my baby.
Definitely.
Like, that's so cool. So in this transition, I think this is a good segue actually, like from being a dancer to now choreographing dances. Obviously, I'm sure all of the years of experience have amplified your choreographic work. But I'm sure there were some learning curves along the way. Like
every day. Still.
Every day. I love those learning curves because that's where we like level up as a human being, you know? What's been one of your favorite like lessons in the choreographic work that you're like, oh my gosh, like I never knew this, and now knowing it, it's transformed my perspective of dance as a whole?
There's so many. So one thing I've been really lucky so far in my work, and I haven't made that many ballets really. We're talking maybe 7 or 8 ballets. And when I say choreography, I just recently learned I have to like explain a little bit about what my choreography is.
Yeah, feel free.
Because in my mind I'm like, everyone knows what I mean when I say I'm a choreographer. But then I realized that there's different worlds of choreography. So my work is a little bit like if you go to an art museum and you're looking at like a painting or something, that's what you're gonna probably see on the stage.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily super like athletic or flashy, although maybe it might be fun to make something like that's a little more fun. It's a little bit like moving art, I think.
Yeah.
So, and I have been very lucky to collaborate with every way in every piece I've done. So I've worked with composers, musicians. I've worked with the one piece I got to work with a visual artist.
Oh, cool.
Who made like 3 artworks on wheels, like paintings on wheels. They were 8 foot tall by 4
Wow.
foot wide. And one side was like black, gray, and pink, and then they would flip, and it was like bright colors.
Yeah.
So we were rearranging these pieces in the space to create a negative space where the dancers were like dancing around the artwork. And then in the last piece, this is in 3 sections. So in the last section, the artwork is revealing and concealing like the movement. And in the end, the dancers and the artwork together form what we see as a new painting, one large painting.
Yeah.
And that was really great to be able to work with someone from a different art form that I hadn't really had a chance to do. And we as artists, we don't all communicate the same way. So it was really interesting to like be figuring out how do I say what I need to say to this visual artist person who knows nothing about dance, you know?
Right.
And the same with, actually, oddly, with composers too. Like, I work with this composer friend in Chile, and we've worked together for years. And recently, he just learned that, like, in order for me to create, I have to have bodies in front of me. You know, because a composer they can sit and by themselves and write out the music, put it into the computer, listen to it, imagine it. Choreographers, or at least I'm not that lucky to be able to do it. Maybe 5% of the work.
Okay.
But like I need the bodies in front of me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then the other really big lesson is how do you convey what you want to someone else, even if they are like even if they're my best friend. And I know this dancer really well, but how do I get what's here onto someone else's body?
Yeah.
Do you know? Maybe even I can demonstrate what I want, but like they're looking at a whole picture of what I'm doing and what I'm saying, but I'm looking maybe at one small detail of it.
Yeah.
So like the communication part is been tricky, but like very exciting.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's like that old, like in grade school when they teach you like, okay, you have to partner up and you have to tell your partner how to tie their shoe. And you try and tell them, and then they just have to follow the directions exactly how you tell them, and then the end result is a mess, right? Because most kids don't know how to tell their partner how to tie a shoe. It's like those principles, like when you're an adult and you're trying to do hyper levels of creativity or just even any industry, it's like communication is so key.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating. I love that. I'm sure that's probably an endless journey.
Yes.
Of learning how to communicate with people.
Yeah.
Talk about like synergy between different art forms. Because I think it's like, for me, I've been able to produce like a couple dance videos, like, and I love it because like it takes me from behind a camera and almost makes me part of the choreography. Yeah. And it's like, I'm not a dancer. I was a musician before doing video. So I understand rhythm, groove, beat, fun, like that sort of thing. But like, whenever I do those types of pieces, I feel like, I feel like a dancer now. So talk to me about like what's your favorite like medium to work with? Obviously music is a big piece of the puzzle, but like what's your biggest inspiration source?
Well, from the beginnings stages of creating a piece, usually it actually comes from words, from literature, from stories.
Okay, yeah.
Because I mean, I love music. I love all kinds of music. So I'm not going to be the type of choreographer that's like, I really love this music, so I'm going to create to it, because I would never settle on a piece of music. Like, there's too many.
Yeah.
So I usually go from like a history story or mythology, or recently, actually, kind of cool, the most recent piece I just did 2 weeks ago, made 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
I interviewed the dancers that I was working with, who have known each other since they were 12.
Oh, wow.
And they grew up in the school that I was teaching at, and they're now both professional dancers. So one's at New York City Ballet and one's principal dancer now at New York Theater Ballet. And so we sat down like this, and I recorded the interview. It was like an hour and 20 minutes. And I used that interview, the words there, to create their movement the next day.
That's so cool. I love that.
So I think, oddly, even though I haven't worked with a writer or a poet or anything like that, a lot of inspiration is coming from literature, poems, and things like that. But the music thing is really special. As a dancer, when you have a musician who's on stage with you, it's like kind of like what you're talking about with a camera. You have to move with the dancers. You have to almost kind of learn the choreography in a sense, right?
Yeah.
It only works really well if you, as the videographer and the dancer are on the same page.
Yeah.
Like if the dancer just starts to go the other way and you were expecting it, it's not going to work.
Right.
So, I mean, I have a special place with a musician because my husband's a dance musician.
Yeah.
But that moment you're on stage together and you feel like, okay, so the musician usually is the one that's like in control, right?
Mm-hmm.
You always have to be with the music. You have to follow the musician.
Yeah.
So the moment you feel him go, and you go at the same time,
Yeah.
and you just know that then you're going to be together. That really, it's not an accompaniment, or is that the word? It's not like someone who's just playing the music and you're dancing to it.
Yeah.
It has to become the same. You have to become a team.
That's cool.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of creativity.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's a glue, it's a bonder,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it bonds and unites the human race. Like, cultures are usually driven around creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Marginalized communities usually align around their problem points and they usually amplify their voices through creativity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like creativity is just the vessel for which like human connection usually is formed. Like, it's fascinating how you can sit down with a person you barely know, and you could be you could be watching a movie or listening to a song or be in an art gallery or sipping on a good wine or whatever it is. Something creative is involved, a good dish, and all of a sudden, like, the barriers get dropped, and like you get to know a person, and that's what that's why I love being creative. It's because I think, like, especially in climates like where we live in today's society across the world, people are so frictioned to each other.
Yeah.
And to me, there's two things that'll decrease that friction. It's one, creativity, and two, understanding. So that's part of why we do this storycast, is like to just hear from people and just like, we're all unique, we're all different, we're all special, we're all here.
Yeah.
You know? So thank you for sharing your time with us a little bit. I have one last question for you. And this is just kind of fun, hypothetical question. It's a creative question. If you were to snap your fingers and something were to change in the world overnight, what would happen?
Something would change in the world overnight.
Either for your world or the world as at large.
I think understanding. I mean, even in my own life, I have family that they don't understand what I do.
Sure.
What do you, now that I'm not a dancer, they have an idea what it was that I was doing as a dancer, although I don't know that they really fully understand it. But I often get the question, so what are you doing now? Like, what is your day like? You try to explain it, but I don't know that they understand. And that's just a small scope, right? You can open it up, like understanding of what you're talking about, each other, cultures, social economic issues, political issues, like just understanding and feeling understood and feeling open to people having different ideas from you, and that's not a bad thing. That's what makes this world go around, is that we all come from a different place, and it's okay to be different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Love that answer. Well, thank you so much for being on the Storycast.
Thank
Anything
you
want to plug, like any social media or any upcoming projects that you have coming on that people should be looking out for?
Sure. So I'm actually very much in the beginning stages of creating a evening length, I'm going to call it a dance, an evening length dance.
Cool.
About the Argentinian poet Alfonsina Storni.
Cool.
I hope I'm saying it correctly.
Sounds right to me.
She was a poet, and she had a very strong friendship with Gabriel Mistral, who was a diplomat in Chile. And so the idea is that this ballet or this piece would premiere in Chile in 2025 with brand new music and brand new dance. And I would be working with dancers there in Chile to stage the work. And yeah, so we got a teaser out there. You can check it out at you can look at Amanda Treiber Instagram or the International Collective, which is my group that is starting to form this piece. It's like a group of musicians and dancers together. But yeah, that's the big one.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to see it, and I'm excited to see it all kind of get fleshed out and see all the creative works that you produce in the future.
Thank you.
Anybody, go check out Amanda on socials. We'll have them linked in the bio. And thank you again for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.